The Chinese have had a writing system for thousands of years. It was first developed sometime during the Shang Dynasty, which lasted from 1600 to 1046 BCE. China has one of the most complex histories in the world. They have always taken great pride in their history and have recorded their nation's events for thousands of years. The Chinese were the first to discover things we take for granted today, like rice, fireworks, and blast furnaces. They are a collage of people and cultures that have come together into one nation over the centuries, and they have many societal aspects that make them unique. The Chinese writing system is one of the easiest to recognize. This system may look weird to Western eyes, but it has a long and complex history, just like many other parts of Chinese culture. The Chinese writing system began during the Shang Dynasty, meaning it has been developing for thousands of years. What was unique about the Shang Dynasty? The Shang Dynasty began around 1600 BCE, but according to Chinese legend, it was not the first dynasty. The first dynasty was the Xia Dynasty, which ruled China from 2070 BCE to 1600 BCE. The Xia Dynasty was founded by Yu the Great, but historians are still determining its authenticity because there are no contemporary written records from that dynasty. People did not begin writing about it until the 1200s BCE, so much of it is shrouded by myth. Most historians say the Shang Dynasty was the first Chinese dynasty because it was the first with any written records. The Shang Dynasty lasted from around 1600 BCE to about 1050 BCE. They were famous for discovering rice, performing human sacrifices, and utilizing bronze work. The people did not use bronze for daily tools, but they did use it extensively for ritual objects and weapons. Bronze was a luxury item, so only the elite could afford it. People mostly commonly used it to make ceremonial vessels that held food or drink. They intricately decorated the bronze by carving the decorations into the clay mold before casting. The objects ranged as large as 2,000 pounds. The Shang people also used bronze for their weapons, giving them an advantage in battle. War was a critical part of the dynasty, but their bronze weapons weren't the only advancement. They also had horse-drawn chariots. While this might seem quaint to us today, at the time, it was a critical technological advancement that allowed the Shang soldiers to move faster across more considerable distances, making them even more formidable. The Shang dynasty fought battles near and far from home. Victorious armies would bring back prisoners of war who either became enslaved people or human sacrifices. They appear to have taken religion very seriously, worshipping both their ancestors and natural forces like the sun, moon, and rain. The Shang dynasty also had a complex hierarchy. Jobs tended to be hereditary, especially within noble families, and the nobility was usually related to the king. Many of the poor people were farmers, and rice was one of their staple crops. They grew rice in paddies and built terraces for them. The poor people ate fish with their rice, but the upper classes ate other meats from animals like chicken, sheep, deer, cows, and pigs. There were many different social ranks, and one reason they could maintain such a large, complex government was the development of a writing system. This script began as pictographs, but the pictures quickly became less detailed and took on symbolic meaning. They even developed symbols to help with pronunciation. The script appears to have developed rapidly, and historians have discovered as many as 3,000 different characters that make up the Chinese written language from the Shang Dynasty. The Chinese written system has changed since it first developed during the Shang Dynasty, but the only written records we still have of this early script come from bronze inscriptions and oracle bones. The oracle bones were critical to the Shang Dynasty. They were part of their ancestor worship to communicate with those who had gone before. It was also a form of divination, and the oracle bones are one of the primary sources of contemporary information about the Shang Dynasty. They are essential because the people wrote on the bones for their divination practice. Why was writing on the oracle bones important to ancient divination? Divination was part of religion in the Shang Dynasty, so priests were also fortune tellers. They had several different divination methods, including drawing pictographs on bamboo strips and throwing them down. The bamboo strips have since decayed, but archaeologists can study the remains of a different form of fortune-telling – oracle bones. Oracle bones are the first contemporary written records of Chinese history, but they weren't originally intended that way. Instead, someone would ask a question, and the scribe would carve it into the bone. The priests used different bones, ranging from small animals to cattle. The priest would then expose the bone to fire until it cracked. They would then interpret the cracking to answer the question. priests would write the answer to the question on the other side of the bone. They would also record what actually happened. This record has helped historians verify and discover facts about the Shang Dynasty because there were many different questions. Some questions were personal, like whether there would be rain for the crops, and others were about the kings or success in battle. The priests carefully recorded names, military achievements, and social events, all influencing how we understand the Shang Dynasty today. So far, historians have found oracle bones that date from about 1250 to 1046 BCE. This method appears to have been less prevalent in later Chinese dynasties, but divination continued to be a vital part of ancient Chinese life. We might scoff at fortune-telling today, but it was a regular part of decision-making during the Shang Dynasty. Regardless of social class, everyone used some form of divination to help them make various choices throughout their lives, including who they should marry, if they should travel, and when they should go into battle. Some people even consulted the oracle bones like modern people check their daily horoscope. The later kings of the Shang Dynasty eventually became the lead diviners of the oracle bones, and the king could consult them about matters of state. Because the priests wrote down all of this as part of their divination process, historians have an incredible amount of specific information today. This type of divination would not have been possible without a writing system. Even though the oracle bones are the oldest examples of Chinese writing, their approach was already suggestive of the modern writing system, suggesting that it developed very quickly once people began to write. How did the Chinese writing system change over time? Although the writing on the oracle bones is recognizable as writing, there are still some differences between it and the modern Chinese writing system. For example, the writing system used by the Shang Dynasty was still rather pictographic, so the character was linked to the object it looked like, which in turn connected the character to a concept. Historians call this writing style jiaguan today. People no longer use this style in China. It evolved around 1000 BCE. The Greater Seal script is the second stage of the Chinese writing system. It has more characters, but is still pictographic. It was only prevalent for about 300 years, and then the Lesser Seal script arose. This script is more symbolic. Characters represent concepts or ideas, not specific objects. This made the symbols more abstract and less detailed. Although the Lesser Seal script evolved around 700 BCE, people still use it today. There have been variations since 700 BCE, including the clerical script, also known as lishu, and a few cursive scripts used in poetry or calligraphy. Still, the Lesser Seal script is the version of the Chinese writing system that befuddles Western eyes today. Thus, the Chinese writing system developed as a symbolic script instead of a phonetic script, which is the basis of Western languages. Instead of using letters to create words that stand for ideas or objects, the Chinese writing system uses symbols directly. That means readers are not reading words, but concepts, and their written language dramatically impacted the development of Chinese culture. It shaped cultural expressions and encouraged assimilation because it was difficult to express ideas that were not already part of the language. It connected people across the country because the script did not change based on pronunciation, so people could understand writing when they couldn't understand a spoken dialect. One of the negative impacts was the creation of rigid class structures based on who could read and write. Because the writing system originated in pictography, it remains complicated and challenging to master. Those who did master it were considered elite, and soon the members of the elite were considered more valuable because they had difficult but essential skills that the lower classes did not. This tension shaped Chinese history for hundreds of years, and China is still working through the implications of this class structure today. How has the Chinese writing system impacted world history? The Chinese writing system soon spread beyond its borders, which is why many Asiatic scripts also utilize a symbolic script instead of a phonetic one. China was the first country in the area to develop a written language, and they shared it as they interacted with other Asiatic countries. When China made contact with Japan, the Japanese did not yet have their own writing system. China and Japan first made contact in the 1st century BCE, but cultural exchanges did not take prominence until the Asuka period, which lasted from 538 to 710 CE. The two countries exchanged much more than just a written language. The Chinese also shared their law codes, court practices, and religion, which is how Buddhism came to Japan. Soon, Japanese scholars traveled to China for education, bringing back other parts of Chinese culture, including art and books. The Japanese copied many aspects of Chinese culture and used Chinese characters to develop their writing system. Yet, the two countries' writing systems are different today, even though they both came from the same origin. The Japanese also copied Chinese music, architecture, and literature, making their culture more like the Chinese. Although the Chinese-Japanese relationship crumbled right before the medieval period, the Japanese had still acquired enough Chinese culture, including the written language, to begin branching out and building a culture of their own. Korea has a similar story with Chinese influence. Korea and China had relations for thousands of years, mostly centered around trade. China saw itself as the most powerful country in the area, and Korea was satisfied to be a tributary as long as China did not interfere with internal matters. Korea maintained its autonomy in that manner, but it still traded heavily with China. Archaeologists believe Korea and China traded with each other as early as the Neolithic period, which consisted mainly of materials like rice and metalwork. Trade continued to develop though, and by the 1st century CE, Korea was trading gold, horses, and iron for writing materials and silk. Korea adopted the Chinese writing system to create their own. Ties between the countries continued to strengthen as the Koreans adopted Chinese political structures and religious practices. But the connections were broken during the Mongol invasion. Since then, Korea has developed in its own way. But the Chinese writing system made way for Korea to adopt many of the values and practices that the Chinese held. Overall, the Chinese writing system has impacted the development of several Asiatic countries, instilling them all with many of the values symbolized in the characters. Although China may not use letters like Western written languages, their writing system has its own beauty and reminds us of China's long and impressive history. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about China, check out our book, History of China, a captivating guide to Chinese history, including events such as the first emperor of China, the Mongol conquests of Genghis Khan, the Opium Wars, and the Cultural Revolution. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.